Hello, friends, and welcome to this golf program unlike any other. Yes, my friends, we have done it. We are back. This is Fairway Rollin, a golf program on FanDuel TV and the Ringer Podcast Network. I am your starter, Joe House, joined, as always, by my incomparable accomplice, Nathan Hubbard, and it is our third major of the season. It is the granddaddy of them all, and we have our heavyweight granddaddy here to help us along the way. Justin Ray here to help us navigate this U.S. Open at Oakmont. Gentlemen, let's dive right in. No reason to tarry. The last six major winners, Justin Ray, have been Scottie Scheffler, Rory McIlroy, Bryson DeChambeau, and Xander Schauffele. The last six. There's one more guy that I might admit into the club, but it's a pretty tight club. Is somebody other than one of those four guys, or Jon Rahm, who's also sort of deserves to be in the conversation, gonna win this? Can anybody outside of that group?
Yeah, it's kind of a uniquely top-heavy time in major championship golf for the men's game. You mentioned that those four guys have won the last six majors: the Scottie, Xander, Rory, and Bryson. And if you look at it, five of the six were ranked in the top three in the world at the time. And the only exception, of course, is Bryson. And that's because he can't earn any damn world ranking points week in and week out. So if you got to go back 24 more majors to find five more top three OWGR winners. That's how top heavy this has been, and kind of an anomaly. Look, it's hard to see anybody beating Scottie Scheffler at this point. Early in the week, you take the 10,000-foot assessment, and the thing I love about the U.S. Open is just the lowercase d democratic nature of the whole thing. There's a rising high school senior playing in the same tournament as Scottie Scheffler, and they both earn their way in, which is great. It's the beauty of it. I love it. But at the same time, you sit and you look at all those names, and you're like, all right, Rory's driver was kind of cranky, and we don't know if he's gone to Florida to work it out. And Xander's putting terrible this season, and he's not quite the same guy. And man, Rahm contended at the PGA, but then Scottie hit the gas and ran away. And you talk yourself in circles, and ultimately you come back to Scheffler. But I'll say, because I'm the math, the numbers guy. Probability says we will have somebody besides that big five, that 4+ Rahm, win this week at Oakmont.
Well, I'll take those five, I think, in this moment. But I think what I need.
I think you have the right call, honestly. I mean, I want to talk myself into more drama going into one of my favorite weeks of the year.
Well, I do too. And look, the drama that everybody's trying to talk us into is how hard this course is going to be this week, right? I mean, I texted my brother and said, "Did you play? How is it?" He said, "I don't need to play it. It looks, big and hard." And I said, Dan, don't use those words exactly, but that's the way that he described the course. And so the rough is up. The greens are going to be super fast. It's going to be long as hell. Start from, first principles, J. Ray, because what I'm ultimately going to ask you to do is give us any reason why we shouldn't think Scottie Scheffler is going to win this. But what are the stats that you're looking at this week? Are you starting to look at rough tendencies? How do you think about the most important stuff this week?
Well, I think the correct terminology for the rough height this week is roughly Ian Woosnam. That's about how tall it is. Some children and dogs will get lost in that rough. It's so tall. I think what's interesting about Oakmont is that it's been power guys who have won the last three times here, right? Ernie Els was, I think, fifth in the field in driving distance. And then Angel Cabrera was either first or second. DJ was first or second. And driving accuracy hasn't been that big of a factor when you look at winners at the U.S. Open in recent years. We've skewed way further towards the power guys. I was looking at the numbers, and over the last 40 or so years, for that first 30-year chunk, the average driving distance rank for U.S. Open winners is around 28. Over the last decade, it's like 6. I mean, you look at the list of names, and it makes sense, right? Gary Woodland, Bryson twice, Jon Rahm. These are guys who can absolutely move the ball. And I think as we get these longer setups with the taller rough, I mean, the first thing I think of is Winged Foot. When, 2020, we went there and everyone was saying, oh, you got to avoid the rough. When really it was just a guy who could slash it out the best, who had the steepest swing into the rough. Bryson that was able to come out on top. So what I'm really interested in is just how difficult it is around these greens. I think when we see the the prerequisite going into a U.S. Open, the days leading up to it, are those pictures of the rough, right? It's just like a rite of passage every year. But I think when we see that, we think more about approach play, right? And the results of being wild off the fairway. I think it can end up being more of an impact when you get around these greens. If you look at the U.S. Opens, last two U.S. Opens held at Oakmont, 10 different greens on this golf course had a scrambling percentage under 40%. That's preposterous. That is so difficult. 10 different greens under 40%, only one at 50% or better on the entire golf course. So Ernie Els led the field in greens and regulation. Angel and DJ hit a zillion greens. I think my favorite stat from the 2016 U.S. Open is that it's a pretty simple one, but Dustin Johnson had 5 fewer bogeys than any other player on the golf course that week. I think just putting yourself in A1 position over and over again and avoiding having to get up and down is going to be something that's really going to be the determining factor here.
Well, so you've been hired by multiple different international squads, national squads, to help them think through the strategy on this course. That's a really interesting point that you make, because House sent me the link to Bryson's tour around Oakmont on YouTube, and it was fascinating. We'll talk more about it. But the biggest takeaway for me was he said, I think the strategy is just like Winged Foot, which, as you said, Bryson won, bomb and gouge, basically. But there's something to being on the green then, and to greens and regulation. If there's going to be 10 greens where you're more likely than not to make bogey if you don't hit the green. So does that make you rethink the strategy here, and that maybe on the 300-yard par 3, you're trying to just get to the green instead of put yourself in the rough? Do you think guys might be incorrectly thinking that long and straight is the play?
I think there's a few guys who can play it like Bryson, and their power is going to be what they lean into. It is their strength. It's what they do best, and that's probably the way they need to lean. But here, it's the ultimately you end up at this juxtaposition. Would you rather be Bryson DeChambeau from 110 yards in really tall rough, or 170 yards away after Colin Morikawa, let's say, hits 3-wood and he's in the fairway? What do you trust more to get closer to the hole? And at Winged Foot, the answer ultimately was Bryson. I don't know if we're going to get the exact same output here, like the differences in the rough, the differences in some of the approach numbers. Bryson's approach play, it wasn't great at the PGA Championship. It wasn't particularly awesome at the Masters either. I think that could be something you factor into it. Maybe you don't think that I'm just focusing on him, but maybe that kind of leans into who you like or who you don't like, and maybe lean away from Bryson there. But I mean, ultimately, I just look at what we've seen.
Corey Pavin's not winning this week is still the point.
Corey Pavin ain't walking through that door and holding up that trophy, man. We've seen over the last decade, you have got to move the golf ball to win a U.S. Open. And I think we're going to see that again.
Yeah, in looking at the 2016 leaderboard, there are some guys that are more, you would characterize as more accuracy.
Jim Furyk.
Yeah, right. And wasn't Zach Johnson the top 10 finisher in 2016? Not guys that were big bombers, guys that you would at that stage, characterize more in that accuracy category. Part of the thing, and again, Nate and I compared notes. We really the Bryson video is so good. It's May the 31st, which is 10 days ago from when we're taping this show, and it was such a unique thing to have the golf course delivered to us through the eyes of one of the top 3 players in the world. And what really resonated with me, and this is where I'm having a hard time trying to decide between some guys, is the unique way that the ball moves once it gets on the green, so that an approach shot that lands where the player desired it to land will end up 40 or 50 feet away from the hole. And, that creates 2 kinds of challenges. In the first place, you must be mentally tough. You cannot say, how did that happen to me? I can't believe the golf gods are so unforgiving, and we'll get to the green feeling like you're a victim. But secondly, it puts so much pressure on lag putting and 3-putt avoidance. And I'm trying to decide, am I going to be heavily in the category when I'm trying to split hairs between these top 5 guys that I think are the best contenders to win, but then going down the card, Do I want to weigh accuracy off the tee heavy, or do I want to weigh the 3-putt avoidance, or the lag putting and scrambling from the rough? Those are the, which one do I want to have sort of at the top as I try and build this filter?
So if we're comparing those two stats, I'd lean more towards the 3-putt avoidance. I found a number that I thought was really interesting to kind of put that into perspective. Over the last 2 U.S. Opens, players have 3-putted greens about 7% of the time, which doesn't sound like a whole lot until you realize that's like 2.5 times more than normal. So you're going to have 3-putt greens. I went back and watched video of the 94 playoff between Colin Montgomery, Ernie Els, and Lauren Roberts. And on the second hole, people forget, Ernie Els made triple bogey. Colin made double, and Lauren Roberts made bogey. Colin Montgomery hit a lag putt. It had to go 40 feet past the hole. It took them like 45 minutes to play the hole. Like, this was like, oh, this is the U.S. Open. I remember, baby. I was 9 years old.
That's the Colin Montgomery I remember. Yeah.
I wasn't gonna hammer him there, but yeah, no. But that's kind of what I hope we get to see this week, because we've been kind of void of that at U.S. Opens in recent years. The exception being, maybe the Shinnecock year when Phil went crazy on the green, and ultimately we had the DJ was running away with it, and then Koepka came back and got him. But yeah, I hope we get that difficulty. And go back to your question, House. I remember the 94 thing got fired up. Sorry, I derailed us a little bit, but I want to think that the rough is going to be significant, right? Because that's what we're hearing about all the time. It's going to be so penalizing. You got to avoid it. And I just look at the raw numbers over the last 8-9 years, and it just tells you a different story. And like, I know you said Furyk, Zach Johnson, they had good weeks at Oakmont, but if you just look at U.S. Opens on the whole over the last, basically since Chambers Bay was the end of an era, you get beyond, it's not quite beyond the Mike Davis setup era, but it's kind of leaning that way. And now we've got the fourth course in the last 6 years that's a Gil Hanse redesign or renovation. That's another aspect I'm interested in seeing. He's talked about how the greens are kind of tabletop surface, and so when you miss, it's going to be more penalizing. You spoke to that a little bit on the Bryson video too. I'm meandering a little bit here, but I still lean towards power being more significant than people might think will be leading up in the week ahead, just simply because it's human nature to look at that rough and go, this is impossible. But I know what the numbers have said over the last 9-10 years at the U.S. Open.
Well, it feels like this is a tournament designed to make people suffer. And you're not tuning in expecting to see a 20 under Valhalla PGA. So, it sounds like maybe even the USGA is not interested in a winner being at 7 or 8 under. Now, I think they'll tell you they're just interested in a fair tournament and the competitors playing, but I don't think they want to see a 7 or 8 under. Does the calculus change for a tournament that is going to be even par to win? Are there guys who just naturally perform better under that level of suffering when the courses are just harder?
Yeah, I tend to go to, it can eliminate guys pretty quickly. Like the first name I think of when you were talking earlier about the mental fortitude to get through a golf course, think like, all right, Tyrrell Hatton, going to go ahead and scratch that name off. And that's probably unfair to him right away, a world-class player, but I think he's got one top 10 finish in his last 20 major championship starts or something crazy like that. And yeah, look, if you're going to get this difficult of a test, certain guys you're going to cross off. Some of the younger guys, I mean, I would lean away from guys who are playing in their third or fewer U.S. Open. I think there's a way to play the U.S. Open that you learn over time. And the average age of winners of the U.S. Open is the youngest of the 4 majors, but that speaks, I think, more to the power thing than experience. Because I think at a place like this isn't like, Aaron Hills or, one of the courses where we've seen guys go super low at a U.S. Open, like LACC, where it was kind of the fairways were wider than normal. The Oakmont members don't want that. They want it tuned up, difficult as possible. I mean, and I think that's what we're going to get this week. And hopefully it's the proper, super difficult test of golf. And look, you can cross some names off the list when you go down and you're thinking about potential winners when it's something that's the conditions are going to be this difficult.
Well, speaking of difficult conditions, let's just jump right in, look at our top 5 and see if we can start, coming up with the ranking. I think the 3 of us would agree with the idea that Scotty's at the shortest odds available right now on the FanDuel Sportsbook at plus 280, I believe. Yes.
Jeez.
And then the
shortest pre-tournament U.S. Open odds since Tiger Woods in 2009.
Wow.
And you know what? It feels right. I don't have any reason.
Right.
I have no reason to argue with it.
Yeah, I mean, let's just be clear. You would have thought Rory was going to be in the running coming out of the Masters. And at the halfway point in Canada, my brother was 25th off the tee and 12 shots ahead of Rory McIlroy. Yeah. And that told you all you needed to know. I mean, Rory is out of sync.
The way the odds are stacked up here, it's Scotty first at plus 280, Bryson at plus 700, Jon Rahm at 12-1, Rory at 12-1, and then Xander at 22-1. Let's see if we agree with that ranking, because I heard a little sentiment there out of Nate, though. I guess it relates to now. In this has Rory fourth and Rory ahead of Xander. Ray, Scotty, Bryson, Rahm, Rory, Xander. Do you feel like that's the right ranking for those five?
So I'll start with, I'll kind of go backwards and get to the answer here.
Love it.
Two of the names on that list have really impressive historic U.S. Open streaks coming into the week. Xander Schauffele, 8 consecutive top 15 finishes at the U.S. Open. Only 2 streaks longer than that since World War II. Jack Nicklaus, because of course it's Jack Nicklaus with 12, and Sam Snead had 9 in a row. Those are the only 2 longer than Xander. Look at Rory, 6 consecutive top 10 finishes at the U.S. Open. I don't think many people realize just how consistently good he's been at the U.S. Open despite not getting over the hump. We think about LACC, and obviously last year what happened, but he's always putting himself up there in great position. The record is 7. If he does it in a row, he ties 3 other players with the longest streak of top 10 finishes at the U.S. Open. Bob Jones, who was the other guy? I don't have the list in front of me. I'm trying to know off the top of my head, but it's like Hogan, Bobby Jones, and a dude from 1902 to 1910 or something like that. So look, it doesn't happen. And it just speaks to how consistent both of those guys are. And yet you sit here this week and I have massive questions about both of them because I just watched Rory McIlroy not be able to find the face of the earth with his driver and miss the cut in Canada. And Xander Schauffele on the greens is like something I don't recognize after watching his career. He's outside like the top 150 in strokes gained putting this season. He just hasn't had the feel on the green since the intercostal strain got him sidelined for a while. So I'm kind of more bullish on the 2 live guys when it comes to that. Like with the way we saw Jon Rahm play at Quail Hollow and just what Bryson DeChambeau can do to a golf course like this, where clearly he's in a right headspace. From that video, it seems, he's defending champion. He's playing with house money this week,
bag.
Exactly. It's his kind of bag. Scotty far and away number 1, justifiably so. Yes. I'd probably go Bryson 2. And maybe this is because we don't have enough statistics from Liv, but I lean Rahm 3 probably over Rory and Xander.
Yeah. Well,
House, aren't you there?
Board has it. Yeah.
Is there anything you've seen from Rory? He's hung over. Like, I think he's hung over from the Masters win, isn't he?
I tend to agree with you, and I think that there is a whole confluence and convergence of events that have befallen Rory after he won the Masters, and let's be clear, this is not like life and death stuff. This is just a one of the luckiest humans to walk Earth with an incredible skill set.
Emotional letdown.
Confronting a challenge to his own athletic performance that it doesn't seem like, he's really over the Masters hangover. And there's a bunch of sort of reasons. We've seen sort of bits and pieces of different kinds of stories going on. Obviously, what happened with his driver, not being able to use the driver that he used to win the Masters and not having an answer to that yet. Whatever was in his psyche that led to him being disinclined to speak with the media during the entirety of the PGA Championship, which should have been a victory lap. It's the first effing major after the Masters. You're back in front of your crowd, your people.
National Golf Club.
At McElroy National. We talked about it on this very broadcast, and yet So I don't like his headspace, and I will tell both of you guys that I have Rory McIlroy to miss the cut at plus 235 on the FanDuel Sportsbook right now. That is a wager that I'm definitely going to make, not because I'm a hater, just because of sort of where we are, Jay Ray.
I think it's human nature, right? It's just this mountain of expectation that was built for a decade between Valhalla and 14. So many close calls, more top 10 finishes than anybody in a 10-year span at majors without a win. Most ever, by far. Like the level of, and the way he lost some of those championships just over and over. I'm going to give the man a pass, all right?
Yeah.
If he misses the cut the next two majors, goes to Tahiti during the playoffs, and then shows up at the Ryder Cup, good on you, man. I'm happy for you. You won the Grand Slam, and it's human nature to do that. That being said, I do have the monumental amount of data that's really strong for Rory McIlroy at this championship. I don't think you can completely count out a good week, but look, the driver stuff's worrisome, and I'm leaning more towards your predicted result house than, say, another U.S. Open title this week.
Well, let's take a break, and when we come back, we will continue on this conversation about the top five and then move down the card and see if there are some other folks that might catch our interest, some names that we might be overlooking as this beautiful challenge staring us here in the face, Oakmont, the U.S. Open. Okay, we're back. We are talking about the five guys that we think have the best chance to win this golf tournament. And shockingly, they are at the top of the odds board on the FanDuel Sportsbook. One thing with Rory, as we sort of were talking through why there's reason for skepticism, for caution, as we think about him, reminder, he did miss the cut here in 2016 with the 77-71, 8 over performance, and so the cut in 2016 was 6 over, and it's hard to forecast exactly where the cut line will fall this year. In the conditions of the golf course are a little bit different. The golf course has been changed, the weather, some similarities, but in any event, just a reminder about the last time Rory was here. He won't be channeling warm fuzzy feelings towards his brethren in Yinzer territory, Nate Dogg.
But he was supposed to be able to do that at Quail Hollow, and it didn't work. So it is interesting that he really is coming in here with very, very low expectations. I'm actually surprised he's at 12-1, and it wouldn't surprise me if he falls a little bit further down as the week wears on. But, you know, with Rory McIlroy, he's always one good driving week away from it. He didn't seem to be mentally in too bad of a place in Canada. He answered the questions about why he didn't speak to the media at the PGA. And look, he just had a bad driving week. He did speak to the media after he missed the cut, which I thought was interesting. It shows him back in a at least more engaging headspace. But, you know, is he gonna solve a problem that had him shoot 12 over on a course where the winning score was 18 under? I'm not sure. So I like House's fade this week. I can't believe I'm saying it, but I do.
Let's talk a little bit about Jon Rahm. He's a challenge because we don't have great data on him in terms of the advanced metrics and how well he's striking the ball. I will tell you guys, I went to the live event here in the nation's capital, the greater DMV area out at RTJ, and I made as a point of emphasis watching Jon Rahm as much as I could, and on the broadcast as well. And they do capture off the tee, you know, a decent bit for live on the broadcast, how the guys are performing. Jon Rahm's driver works. I'm here to announce to everybody, the driver is work. What you saw at Quail Hollow, it was not an apparition. It is real, and it is beautiful. And I will also say he is very comfortable. He is very much in his own head. Now, here's the question, J. Ray. We believe that patience is a virtue at Oakmont. We believe that even temper is a virtue at Oakmont. Jon Rahm has won 2 majors, so he has the mental fortitude for taking on some bad breaks, but he hasn't encountered a bad break like what Oakmont is going to deliver to him. And that would be, to me, the only thing that I would really worry about with Rahm. What do you think?
I tend to lean more. The guy, he got 3 kids now? I think that's a different dude than maybe the volcanic one of 22, 23, age 24, something like that. So I don't think that's as much of a concern. His driving statistics at the PGA Championship were eye-opening, to say the least. He was great. It was refreshing to me coming out of the PGA Championship. Obviously, Scotty's the most important storyline because he won the tournament, but the revival of seeing Jon Rahm on the big stage, like, man, he's fun to watch when he's going, man. Like he starts making some birdies and getting momentum, and the crowd was starting to get behind him there at Quail Hollow for a little bit too. So I was really encouraged by that. I think he's going to rightfully take his place among the favorites going into these major championships moving forward. I was always on board saying last year was just kind of a funky year for him in the majors. He had it was a foot injury or a toenail thing at the U.S. Open, and he had to miss Pinehurst, and everything was just kind of thrown out of whack there in his first year on LIV when it came to going to the major championships. I think he's going to be a force to be reckoned with still the next 4 or 5 years in these big events, and this is a golf tournament and a golf course where his character traits in terms of power off the tee, and he's obviously a past champion of the U.S. Open. I'd be surprised if Jon Rahm wasn't in the mix at some point this week.
House, you and I are believers in shots gain vibes, and it's why we try to get on the ground as much as we possibly can. And for this player, he wears it on his sleeve every time. The week that he won Riviera, he was bounding up the steps from 18 into the dining area and smiling, and when he is on, that is the Jon Rahm that you see, and that's when he wins. And so coming into a golf tournament how he feels. It's why we knew last year coming into the Masters something wasn't right with Rahm. And the way that he finished that PGA, even after he gave up that lead and didn't quite finish the way he wanted to, the energy and positivity he was exuding in that interview with Amanda about being back in contention, the fact that you saw that eye of the tiger on the ground in Virginia this week tells me he's coming in, and I think you're exactly right. I think he's one of the 3 men to beat. He's a student of history. He knows now the kind of statistical, even on a different tour, the kind of statistical greatness that we're seeing from Scotty. He knows he's up against a guy in Bryson that has one more U.S. Open than he does. I think he wants to be on that current Mount Rushmore, and I think in this moment, he's one of the 3 best guys coming in.
I think, too, people kind of tend to forget that run that Rahm went on the year before Scotty went on his run, where, was it like 4 wins leading into the Masters, and then Scotty went and did the same thing the next year. So I don't know if it got overshadowed a little bit, and then the move to LIV. But this is a guy who can light the world on fire. He is a super, super talented. He's going to be at the Ryder Cup for forever to come. I mean, I really am bullish on Jon Rahm. Forgive me for the stupid Spanish pun. I didn't mean to do that, but I'm very, very positive about Jon Rahm's outlook this week at Oakmont.
Yeah, and look, since that U.S. Open that he had to withdraw from, he gave us a top 15 finish at the Open Championship. He gave us the lead at the Olympics. He had the lead by several strokes on in the final round of the Olympics. That's no small thing. These were the best guys. And then he validated that by showing up at the Masters. Now, I'm still mad at his Thursday performance, but he came back around and finished in the top 15 there, and then reminded all of us of what he can do at that PGA Championship. Yeah, Rahm's a horse, and somebody's going to climb on and ride him. I'm 12 to 1, probably a little taste on my dance card, but I will just go ahead and confess up front. Bulk of my allocation this week is on Bryson DeChambeau. This is the tournament that I had circled before the season even started for Bryson. So many of the similarities, as you've already observed astutely, J. Ray, to that Wingfoot situation and what we got to see with our own eyes through that video. And again, I know that it feels like we're probably overdoing the accolades to Bryson for the video, but we just don't see that out of an athlete at the very top of their form, performing their sport and giving us some insight into how they execute at that high level. And at the same time delivering to us really an unparalleled preview of what this golf course challenge is. He shot even par in the practice round, and it was apparent, his brain is he's a big brain fella, but he has no concerns. You don't see the weight of any of mistakes sort of weighing on him. Nathan, what do you, Nathan, give me your Bryson take.
Yeah, for Bryson, I think, first of all, I'd much rather have a scientist making these lag putts on these greens than a feel guy. And it's because we're going to get a lot of rain this week leading up to the tournament. And so I am happy to have him doing math instead of trying to get his head into a right place. But it is his head that's the only thing that I worry about, because Bryson DeChambeau has not played well in contention over the last few majors. And even back to last year's U.S. Open, Rory shot a better score that day. It's just that he spotted Bryson 3 shots, and obviously we know what happened down the stretch. But I think that's the part for me that I'm really interested to see. And I think you're exactly right that this tournament, this style of course setup gets him, he feels like he's the alpha dog. And I think in these last couple of tournaments, for whatever reason, he's struggled a little bit in a couple various ways when the pressure's turned up. This one, I think he walks in feeling like the hoss. And boy, I'll tell you, a year ago at Pinehurst, there was just no doubt. Like, he was the main character. All the other guys were watching him. And I think that's when he thrives the most. It's just in this particular environment, he gets ceded that alpha dog status by most of the guys just because of what he has accomplished here.
My only question for Bryson is, how good is his approach play this week? Wasn't great at the Masters. There were a lot of questionable approach shots there. And then the PGA wasn't stellar either. When he won at Winged Foot, he was 26th in the field in fairways hit. Not a big concern. I mean, that's above average, but it's nothing to be, heralded. Led the field in strokes gained approach. 13th in strokes gained approach at Pinehurst, so not necessarily the highest, but I mean, still pretty strong. So my question is, how good is his approach play? How dialed in will he be? Because he was at the top of his game hitting it out of that rough at Winged Foot. And I'm interested to see if maybe we see the same guy this week.
Yeah, I have a very stupid observation, and I'll confess it up front, but Nathan can confirm this. What we saw him when he was in the fairway at Oakmont on the video was compressing the golf ball in a manner that to me is not like typical. And he was hitting, for him, low flight shots in. He knew exactly the number that he wanted to carry it, and more times than not, I would say 80% of the time, he hit the number that he wanted to hit in terms of, doing the math with his caddy on, this is what we want to hit, this yardage that we want to get it to. Okay, fellas, we've talked about the top 5. Let's jump into the rest of the 151 players that may not have a chance to win based on our forecasting, but certainly can compete for our national title here. Justin Ray, give us a couple names that are hitting some of your marks in terms of attributes and performance.
So one guy who I think is probably the most interesting study in the men's golf game this year, who's been great in every event that's not a major, and all the numbers point towards the ball striking great. He leads the PGA Tour in greens and regulation. He's top 5 in strokes gained approach, but he's missed the cut in both majors this year, and that's Sepp Straka. I mean, all of his different metrics point towards success in the big events because of how well he hits his irons. It just hasn't happened in the 2 biggest weeks we've had of the year so far. I'm not necessarily leaning towards him. I just think he's a really interesting storyline and somebody who you might consider, okay, maybe he figures it out, breaks out of the kind of poor play he's had at the first 2 major championships of the year. One name I have not heard a whole lot about that I'm kind of bullish on, this guy's finished 8th or better 3 of the last 5 years at the U.S. Open, 6 consecutive made cuts. I don't think I saw him hit a shot at the PGA, but he finished tied for 2nd. That's Harris English. He is a really good U.S. Open player. If he's accurate enough off the tee, I think he could definitely be a factor. I might have money on him for a top 10. I don't see Harris English winning this week, but he's somebody who overperforms at the U.S. Open. And then another guy who was really interesting to me, he blew a 4-shot lead here on Sunday in 2016. That's Shane Lowry. I mean, all his different iron metrics and ball striking metrics, I think I've said it each of the first 2 preview podcasts for the majors this year, but they all are pointing skyrocketing towards a breakthrough and another major championship victory. Might like him a little bit more at Portrush, where of course he's already won a major championship, but he played well for, 58, 59 holes at Oakmont in 2016. He's a much, much better player now than he was then. Those are three names I think are interesting. I'm kind of high on Harris English. Another guy who I think is really interesting at this point in his career, it's just his second year in the major championships. Ludwig Aubert at the Masters is 13 under par. At all the other majors, he's 13 over par. Now, his lone example of he played pretty well was when he had the 36-hole lead at Pinehurst last year. The number that really deteriorates for Aubert, I still don't say his name right. I'm going to eventually, but by the time he's 30, I'll get it right.
Oh,
Ludwig. By the time Ludwig's around the green numbers kind of plummet when he gets to the major championships. That more difficult rough kind of leads me to lean away from him this week.
That makes me nervous.
But he's been arguably the best putter at the Masters if you combine the last 2 years. So you might take some corollaries between the speedy greens at Oakmont and compare them to what we've seen at Augusta National. So Harris English has definitely got some action on my part, and then those are some other players who are some pretty interesting storylines.
I mean, outside of our Big Five house, the next six guys on the list to me are all sort of living off ghost. Colin Morikawa, Ludwig, Neiman, Fleetwood, and Thomas. In Thomas's case, we know that he's got it in him, but we just haven't really seen it in tournaments outside of the PGA. Ludwig, we just spoke about.
One top 10 finish in 12 major starts since he won the PGA Championship. 6 missed cuts.
And he seems to be speaking with some confidence this week. It just doesn't feel like he's been able to convert on that front. Tommy Fleetwood is the world's best player who doesn't win. I mean, that's just what it is at this point. And I love him to death. And maybe he's going to have his Sergio moment where he breaks through and his first win on American soil is going to be in a major. It's just, there's this ghost of Tommy and the legend of Tommy. We love him, but it just doesn't feel like he executes. Morikawa, it feels the same way right now. It just doesn't feel like he has that dog in him right now, despite such a great start statistically to the year. And I'll let you talk me out of that, Jay Ray, in a sec, because the one other guy who's sitting on that list is Joaquin Neiman, who won again on LIV this week and who, just from a sort of victory standpoint, has racked up the most. But he keeps showing up to these majors, save for the PGA, where he finally at least showed a little bit of glimmer, but he keeps showing up to these majors a little bit overhyped. And I don't know if it's the weight of that sits on his shoulders and he doesn't execute in the way that he is on LIV. I don't know if it's that the competition on LIV means we should knock him down a little bit, but he's beaten John Rahm in all these golf tournaments that he wins, right, Jay Ray?
So on the Neiman front, I would say that I think of him a lot this week the way I thought about Patrick Cantlay going into last year's U.S. Open, where it was, you got to show me you can hang around and contend in a major championship before I believe in you. Cantlay then had a great week. He had his best week in the majors. And what you see from Neiman is, again, remember, this guy's still pretty young. And he's still, I know we have this contrast with these guys who were so successful in big events so young, going back since Spieth broke through. Justin Thomas the same way. And then Scotty isn't as young as those two guys were when they broke through, but the ascent was so rapid. You can throw John Rahm into that mix as well, where usually it takes guys longer to break through, get the more reps in the big events. He did have his first top 10 finish at the PGA Championship. Not all top 10s are created equal. It wasn't I'm in the heat of the battle. Ludwig last year, the 36-hole leader, co-leader, wherever he was. It's not quite that level of it, but that's kind of the way I view him, is that I got to see it happen. I got to see him in the heat of it in a big event before I start predicting that he's going to do anything. As far as Morikawa goes, the second best scoring average in the history of the U.S. Open, behind Xander Schauffele, which I thought was interesting, considering it's one of the majors he hasn't won yet. Same with Xander. They both have wins at the PGA and the Open, yet they're 1-2 all-time in scoring average at the U.S. Open. So go figure. But he's basically the way that I've talked about the approach this week, where I'm not sure how important the rough will be. I think about wing foot. Colin's like, if I viewed it the complete opposite way, he's probably, of the guys on the top of the board, he's the most accurate off the tee. And that's who you would lean towards. If I, had bizarro view on how I'm looking at this golf tournament, I just don't know if he's long enough to succeed at a U.S. Open right now. I mean, it's going to take probably a pretty unique U.S. Open setup for me to have a lot of confidence in one of the shorter elite players in Colin Morikawa being a pre-tournament favorite.
Yeah, I'm off of Morikawa now. He let me down at the PGA
you can't
Championship,
go back.
so now's
If you
the time.
go back,
I'm not
go back.
He just can't put 4
We got to
rounds
get
together.
you out of this relationship.
I have some pricing, and I want to sort of bounce it off of you. Some of these guys, like Harris English was on my card already. I absolutely adore him this week. He's 6-1 to finish in the top 10. That's plus 600. He's plus 250 to finish top 20. I'm playing both of those. Guaranteed, lock it in. I'm going to fade Oberg. I just need to see him play one good time in a major that's not the Masters that has rough, because his numbers in the rough continue to suck. I've been chirping about it. I'm going to continue to chirp about it. The way I'm going to play him is plus 166 to miss the cut. That's what I think will happen to Ludwig Oberg this week. I mean, it's not a conviction. I'm not going to put multiple units on it, but if I'm going to play him at all, it's going to be in that direction. Tommy Fleetwood, to Nate's point, is exactly right. I don't need to have any exposure to him to win, but what's wrong with having a top 10 at plus 280 and a plus 120 for a top 20 for Tommy? Those are plus odds. J. Ray, I mean, Tommy
the
Fleetwood
only man in the history of the U.S. Open with 2 rounds of 63 or better. The only guy. He's got all these incredible superlatives about his career, all the high finishes in majors, most top 10s without a win in like the history of the PGA Tour, as long as they've been keeping track of it. He's the same guy where I'm not going to bet him to win a major championship until I see another big contending week. But, you know, obviously super duper talented. And the more I think about your Ludwig miscut, the more I might lean towards you, House. Those around the green numbers in the majors, not good, not promising.
And around the green is very unfriendly here at the Oakmont. Couple other names I want to bounce off of you. I am nothing if not a creature of recency bias. I already sort of had an inclination towards Sam Burns before he went into a playoff, because he has that combination of both long off the tee, good accuracy off the tee, and he's putting his butt off. I mean, he's already a solid
except
putter.
for 5-footers to win on the playoff.
5-footer to, like, what are we doing? You're supposed to be one of the top 5 putters on tour, Sam Burns. What are we doing out here?
Bermuda Burns. He needed to be in Florida. He would have just, but it would have been nothing. But look, he's a guy. Too. Yeah, exactly. He's a guy who's had better strokes gained tee to green in each of his last 3 starts. So you like that trend. He got his first top 10 finish at the U.S. At a major at the U.S. Open last year. Another positive trend. He obviously played well enough to win. If it weren't for missing that 5-footer to beat Ryan Fox. I don't see any reason that I wouldn't think that Sam Burns could have another good week and have a top 10 back-to-back years of the U.S. Open.
Well, you can get plus 220 for him to finish top 20. That's fine. That's a good validating performance after, being in a playoff the week before. I'm good with that, J. Ray.
I got one down the board that we haven't mentioned yet. It's very rare that if you can get a low first-timer at the U.S. Open and it's a guy coming off 2 wins in like a month and a near win at the Memorial. Ben Griffin's playing in his first U.S. Open this week. So if you could find, I imagine, I was trying to look at who I liked anywhere near him in terms of low finisher debutante. And I mean, it's very rare, like I said, that you're going to have a first timer at the U.S. Open that's rattled off a couple of wins here. I know one was a team event, but the contending at the Memorial said as much to me as anything.
I'm going to pick up on the same concept, Nate. You can talk me out of it. Again, sucker for recency. Why not Ryan Fox? Ryan Fox, look at his numbers on tour in terms of 3-putt avoidance this year. He is inside the top 20 for sure. The man has no problem getting out of the rough. He fares very well in that regard. And 2 wins over in the last 6 weeks. I mean, there is some reason to believe that he's not afraid of the moment.
Yeah, I didn't love the putting in extra time either yesterday, and neither did Trevor Immelman. That was fantastic. Just beating up on the Kiwi.
Great. Loved it.
It was so good. Just the national bias that was happening there was terrific. But he just had the rugby outside the U.S. really creates a whole lot of hatred. But
I'm friends with both him and Frank Nobilo, and I just know that he was probably looking directly at Frank when he was saying that stuff.
100%. It was so great. But yeah, I mean, I think it's just a question of you'd say, well, is there going to be a letdown after the week? But he's the hot hand right now.
All right, gentlemen, it's time. Nate Dogg, you go first. Who is winning this U.S. Open at Oakmont?
Scotty Scheffler's been playing the best golf in the world, and there's no reason to think otherwise at this point. He's rested. He did the thing that he didn't do last time going in. He's got a week off. He has taken his time. I just believe my eyes. And the best, it was Siwoo who just said, it looks like the pins that are in the hole are reeling in Scotty Scheffler's golf balls. That's how well he's hitting the ball right now. And this is a different tournament, to be sure, but it just feels like a man grounded in the faith and the family in the way that he is has gotten through whatever mental hurdles they're going to be. This guy is built to suffer. And when he has the game that he does and the mental capacity to endure, it's just really hard to bet against him this week.
No argument. I'm going to live bet him. I'm going to root for him to come out double bogey, and then live bet him on Thursday as quickly as that's possible for him to win the golf tournament. J. Ray, I'll go second because it just to be fair, so you get to hear the considerations and the cases. I'm going with Bryson. Yeah. I have no reservations about it whatsoever. The man of the people at the U.S. Open doing what he does. It is his place with his people. He will be beloved. I mean, he was phenomenal at the live event I went to in Virginia. Found every kid within arm's reach and made sure that he touched all of them. He touches all the people. His video was outstanding. Just shuffling around and threw off a nice even round with at least 4 birdies. I think he might have had 5 birdies. He is my pick at 7-1. Bryson DeChambeau. J. Ray, the floor is yours.
So all year I've thought this feels like Winged Foot. It really does feel like Winged Foot with the rough. And then I thought about it, and I was like, I picked Bryson to win the PGA Championship. I can't do it again. And then I started leaning a little bit, watching John Rahm last week and seeing him back in the mix. And man, he was so good at the U.S. Open when he won at Torrey Pines.
Yeah.
And then I thought about it, and Scotty Scheffler's won 3 tournaments by 3 shots or more in his last 4 starts. I can't not pick him. My brain, like, numbers can steer me one way, and then I just look at it and I'm like, Scotty's the best player in the majors over the last 4 years, and it's not really very particularly close. And this is the best he's ever putted. Good luck, everybody. I mean, he's putting better than he has in his entire career. We talked about how a couple years ago, if he just putted average, he probably would have won 7 or 8 times, just statistically speaking. This is his time, and I know it seems like too easy to make that pick, but I gotta go with what my brain's telling me. I'm picking Scotty Scheffler to win.
You're seeing greatness. You're seeing it on paper and you're seeing it on TV. Like, I just believe when people show you who they are, believe them. He has been showing us greatness. When I start getting asked questions by my TV partners for like win percentage comparisons, like, I mean, the only player in the history of golf that has a win percentage is Tiger Woods. We're getting into that kind of territory where this run of sustained greatness is it's its 4th season. He won a major outside of the U.S. Open. I think he gets the 3rd leg of the Grand Slam this week in Pennsylvania.
It's Father's Day weekend, so all the fathers have a great weekend. And it is also all across this great country of ours, member guest weekend. So if you're in one of those tournaments, please try and stay upright through the 48 to 72 hours. Until then, for all of you, please, let's head them straight out there.